Hello everyone, welcome to GS Core. My name is Abhishek Saxena and I teach Public Administration, Governance and Social Justice. So today we have with us All India rank 574 for UPSC Civil Services Examination 2022, Piyush Gathala. And Piyush scored exceptionally well in Public Administration with 283 marks. So welcome Piyush.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Piyush, how the world has changed for you to begin with, pre-selection, post-selection?
Sir, I got selected in my 2019 Civil Service examination in Postal Service, and that had more visible impact right now because I'm already in Postal Service training. So, I can tell more clearly about how that had changed me. So, the first thing is that it provides a bit of comfort in terms of self-identity, that you believe that you have done something and you can do good in future as well. So that's the most important thing. Aside from that, there is a degree of financial independence, there is a certain amount of care that one receives from the government in nurturing one's own personality. So all that has also been a positive aspect of it. As far as this exam's result goes, I'm still awaiting the training period to start, which will start after July.
So, tell us more about your journey, as in how you actually thought out of becoming a civil servant, because Piyush has been an accomplished individual even before coming into the ecosystem of civil services examination. He's an aerospace engineer from IIT Bombay and has had stellar academic record throughout. So what motivated you to become the civil servant?
So for me, the main aspect about civil services was the ability to make an impact and see its result. Like, that is a very empowering thing, that you are given the autonomy to take certain decisions and you are able to implement them. Learn in the process how good you are as a leader, how good you are in managing resources that you are provided. And at the same time, there is a certain degree of systemic support in form of training, resources, as well as establishment that is there under you. So that was the empowering part to me, and which made me see that while as an engineer I would be just restricted to a particular domain of life, in civil services I can see much wider and diverse scope of the social life that exists in a country, especially in a developing country where a lot depends on how the government plans things. So this was the reason why I tried to pursue on the civil services side.
Great. So were there any preferred subjects when I talk about general studies? And then I'm sure there must have been certain areas which you did not like that much. But still you managed them with flying colors across your attempts. So what was your game plan vis-a-vis the areas you like and vis-a-vis areas that you don't like so much? So how you tackled that?
So the caution, a word of caution that I would say is that there are a lot of things one person might like in the syllabus, but in those subjects, especially in my own case, I liked the GS3 part about security. I liked the GS1 part of history. These two were the most interesting parts to me. But GS3 especially has been an Achilles heel of sorts. Like, I've not been able to score very well in it over the years. I've invested a lot of time in it because I like reading those things. But when you look at security or you look at agriculture, the weightage of those is like 100 marks, both combined. And at the same time, if you look at geography, it itself is 100 marks. So you have to weigh your interests with the weightage that they have in the mains examination. So I tried to consciously reorient my preparation out of my own biases towards the biases of UPSC. That this is what UPSC supposedly values more than other knowledge.
Right.
So that was the way, that was the approach that I had to handle that subject that I liked versus subjects that I didn't like. Another thing is that making the studies personal is very helpful. Like when you appreciate certain things about the exam and you try to understand that, okay, this is something that exam appreciates. How can I appreciate it? Like, why is it so important that UPSC is asking questions from it? So when you're able to see that this has a sense that there are reasons why this is an important part of the overall system, like say geography in itself. So you are able to more deeply understand and bring a natural curiosity in it. Otherwise, it restricts to more of a ritual of writing the answers, which doesn't bring in good amount of depth, and it's more like a struggle writing such.
One slogs it out somehow.
Yes.
Right.
When I had made very meticulous 300-page notes digitally, so I took the printout and I just focused on them. That I'll try to bring the best out of these instead of learning something new. And then I wrote test series to cover new material. And I decided that I will not be bothered by the fact that I'm coming through something new in test series, because I'm not able to put much time into the reading part. So I'll take test series as also learning, that I'm learning new
So
material.
basically utilizing test series as a tool to enrich your learning.
Yes.
Right,
so-
that is very important, friends, because more often than not, test series are received as passively, and you just give a test, you get the marks. Either you get very happy about it, or you don't get very happy about it, right? But you should use it as a tool.
And using test series as a litmus test for whether you're going to pass or fail is very bad idea. Like, you should focus on test series to develop your approach to how to answer right. Like, when you write the answers, it should be a process of learning throughout your tests. You can't just say that, okay, in this test I got 125, so I'm now happy, I've achieved nirvana of sorts, and now I don't need to do anything more. You should continuously keep focusing on what worked for you. If you are getting good marks, come back to test copy and check what was the process that you followed, and build up on that, instead of just thinking that you are good at this subject or you are good at something naturally. That doesn't happen. And if you think like that, that's when you ignore a subject. Like, I got 265 in my first attempt and I thought, like, I'm good with PubAd. So next time I didn't get good marks. I decreased my marks by 30 marks. So that happens when you have this approach that you just look at your marks as desirable or undesirable. Instead, more predictable way is to look at the process of things, analyzing through tests, and coming back to the same approach that, okay, I'm going to write next test better. That's how we can improve the scores over time.
So basically, complacency is costly.
Yes,
that is what the summation of your experience while you were going through your attempts is. So tell us more about the contribution of various relevant sources. I mean, you must have tapped all the standard sources, right? Like all the right buttons.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But how did you learn to use them? I'm sure there is a great deal of self-introspection, just like you said, self-awareness. How much how much credit would you give to an extent to your peers, your friends, your guides, your teachers, in the way shaping up your learning?
The thing is, as I was mentioning earlier, that this attempt I mainly focused on writing the tests and building upon my knowledge. So the test series evaluation, getting feedback on my evaluation was very critical. Here at JScore itself, I had written tests and I used to come back to sir to ask that what am I doing wrong, what am I doing right, can I innovate something. So that was the deciding factor, and I credit a lot of my marks to the factor that I could come back to sir and get feedback on questions. So I believe that is the defining thing which made a major contribution to my selection. And other than that, sources as such, like academic sources, are plentiful available in the market, but most important is to get the right guide to navigate those sources. And
I'm asking about certain compilations because when a candidate actually walks through the alleys of these places where most of the training institutions for preparation are situated, there's a flood of material out there. So obviously for a person who's ab initio into the preparation, it gets difficult to actually identify whether I should pick this material or that material, whether I should look at topper's copy, whether I should look at compilations, right? Things like that. So what kind of advice from your wealth of experience you would like to give to the newly budding candidates out there, that what they should pick up from the market and what they should not?
my advice would be that firstly treat prelims and mains alongside. So do not segregate your learning for prelims separately from mains. And in case of PubAd, you can very much link PubAd with prelims as well. So have that integrated approach in sources as well. And then when you look at what sources you have to study from, there are standard books available. Like I used to refer to Mohit Bhattacharya quite a lot, and for thinkers, the Prasad and Prasad book is really helpful as the beginning part. It also brings your natural curiosity in the subject, and after that you have to at the same time keep looking at previous year questions. So previous year questions act as the guiding tool about how to approach UPSC from the knowledge that you have gained. So this is how I approached overall public administration preparation, and as such I think that source material are very few. One has to restrict to single source for one subject, and Mohit Bhattacharya is a reliably good book, and as I mentioned, Prasad and Prasad. Aside from them, there is Fadia and Fadia, and in paper 2 there is just this one very good book which I'm Rajni Goyal. Arora and Goyal. So that is good enough. Other than that, you have to, like, you learn through coachings, or you write a test series and you learn, and current affairs in paper.
How would you rate second ARC for paper 2?
Sir, second ARC is good for introduction of any concept because it has very good its report on financial management has details about zero-based budgeting in very much engaging manner. So it's there, but like I wouldn't say that it can be used for body side. It can be used for one introduction.
At least getting to know the concept kind of a thing.
Yes, introduction and conclusion. Conclusion is always like in at least half of the questions reserved for ARC.
Reserved for
recommendations.
Right. So that is there. So apart from this compilation of sorts in this issue, I would like you to reflect upon the testing. And when I say testing, because the proof of learning is ultimately, like we say, that the proof of the pudding is in eating. So yes, the proof of the learning is ultimately the validation part of it. That validation of sorts that you get. And recently we have seen that there has been a shocker of a prelims that has almost rocked the ecosystem. So for prelims, what kind of a testing methodology you would recommend?
For in my first attempt, I didn't clear prelims, and that made me like it was a blessing in disguise in a way, because I developed a very systemic approach towards prelims, and I believe that the most important thing in that is making your approach as rational as you can. Very often we judge questions in prelims based on our emotions about certain difficult words, which make us think this question is hard. For example, this trend that has recently arisen, that how many of these are correct. You suddenly feel that I will not be able to do this question now. So to overcome that fear, you need to consciously recognize your questions into two categories, like some questions in which you are totally confident and questions in which you are not confident. So take that as the criteria for any paper that you write. Firstly, when you're learning, so your target should be that you increase the number of questions where you are confident. But it's inescapable that in various level of question papers, some have higher questions where you have to take risk. Like this year's exam, when you are saying that how many of these statements are correct, you can't really know all the four for sure. So you have to take some element of risk. So this has to be parallelly done by writing tests. So this knowledge cannot help you with. Knowledge can only help you with making a calculated guess. So you treat those two things separately. When you just look at marks, you look at 130 out of 200 as just a mark. But if you look at it from this view, that okay, you attempted 130 questions, 130 marks you reached, and you attempted 60 questions, out of which 50 were confident in. So they were easy questions for you. So it was very natural that you scored 130. At the same time, in a paper like this year's, when you would have been confident only in say 20 questions. So in that case, how much more you score is dependent on the risk you are able to take.
It's about dynamic calibration in the examination hall, right?
Yes.
And how do you actually train for that? Because you know, the unpredictability that is associated, especially with the prelims nowadays, is something that is bothersome to many people, right? But surely there can be certain strategy, and it is not the first time, realistically speaking, that the prelims, have come as a tosser, right?
Yes,
There have been
yes.
instances before, and every year
Yes.
the extent might differ, but every year there is a surprise. So, how to tackle the surprise? Is there a methodical way that you prescribe?
Yes. The technique that I adopted in this was like, okay, you do not know what UPSC is going to ask, but you can sort of think that there is certain known areas from which they will ask, and then there is the unknown unknowns in which you don't even know where will they'll ask from. So take this as a part where you're bound to take calculated risk. Don't worry about this. Don't bother about the fact that someone who's saying that we covered this question in our test series. Don't worry about that. You only worry about the known unknowns, that okay, this is the syllabus from where questions are going to come, at least 50% of them, and I'm going to target it. And aside from this, which is purely knowledge based, the other 50% I'll prepare based on the calculated risk taking. So you do that throughout your tests. Like you segment, when you're attempting a test, you write that which are the questions you're confident in a separate table, and in this parallelly you write the questions in which you took risk, and then you measure that if you are taking less risk.
So while there is a lot of word out there about what you should do to actually clear this examination, that is how you should study, those are the sources you should tap, right? So the question which I'm about to ask is actually twofold. You would have also encountered such bombardment of information about this should be done, this should be done, this should be done. So how did you sift out that what should be actually done? Not exactly what should be done, but how you actually went through that process of filtering out. And also, since there's a lot of word out there what should be done, I would like you to lay emphasis on things what should not be done.
Yes. So when we look at things that should be done, most important thing in filtering out various advices is what works for you. So there is no alternative to knowing yourself. Like if you know what way you study, if you know what is the most productive time of the day when you are able to be your best, that is far more important than copy pasting someone else's strategy. So that is the most important tool which you can utilize, while at the same time it is important to know other people's strategy, but to make it individual is the key word, that it changes for everyone. The same thing doesn't work just the same way for everyone. So that was my approach, that I'll try to test things, but at the same time I'll try to review that okay, I've put 1 week like this and I've tried to like implement these strategies, and does it work for me? So one important technique that I derived out of it was that I should have less sources and I should revise more often, and that really worked a lot. It gave me a lot of confidence and it gave me time to write tests as well. So I believe that such strategies need at one time information, that you seek feedback from toppers, that you get to know that what are the strategies people are following, but then experimenting, that you have to do that yourself to know what.
So a trial and error kind of an approach.
Yes.
To actually do your SWOT analysis. That is what you want to encapsulate,
Yes.
right? So friends, SWOT analysis is very very important, because without knowing your strengths and weaknesses as well as identifying opportunities and threats, you cannot really have a logical plan, right? So that is something there. What about the don'ts? What one should actually stay away from?
So this is as important, because at the same time it's simpler as well, that if you note down that these are the things, these are the traps I might fall into, so that you do not you do not repeat the same mistakes. So for me, I can think about 3 main factors which I would say that the mistakes that I made, that I would advise others to not make. One is the obsession with theory. So there is huge syllabus of UPSC, and then there is ample amount of books on them, and they are good books. It's not like they are only written because of UPSC or something. A lot of people have put their genuine efforts into them. So you'd feel interested in them, but avoid going beyond what is asked for UPSC. So that would be the first learning that I did, because in many of the topics which are just mentioned as a word in syllabus, like planning. So I read a book on planning in 20th century, which was a good book, but I feel like it didn't translate into marks in economy.
So
because
the ROI is not so much.
Yes, so this is the first thing, that you determine ROI for everything. objectively from the point of view of UPSC, not from knowledge point of view. Second is getting too stuck up in current affairs. Like current affairs, there is immense amount of data that generated every day. Lot of coachings are there, and then lot of newspapers are there. One would always find something that they didn't know before. But you have to decide a limit for yourself, and I believe that 2 hours a day is the red line you shouldn't cross in terms of current affairs. And the third thing is avoiding writing tests. Like thinking that I'm not ready yet, I will be ready later on. That is a thing people do because they have this perfectionist approach that I'll do when I'm able to do all 100 questions with knowledge.
And that doesn't happen.
It never happens. So you have to skip on that sort of a mentality, jump into the tests and learn from it. Don't see tests as a reflection of marks you'll get in the final exam, but see it as a first step. And in tests should be integrated with your learning.
So basically a learning, testing and relearning kind of an approach that includes unlearning certain things as well.
Yes.
Right. So friends, I hope that really helps to a lot of people who are bombarded with a sort of information regarding preparation. Now coming to your optional, you gave all your attempts and this was your fifth attempt, right? With public administration as the option. So how did you come to zero it down? I mean, there are very, we have a host of optionals which UPSC permits. Why you chose public administration?
At the beginning of it, I was not sure about public administration because when I started preparation in 2017, the accumulated image of public administration was that it's not a good subject to take. And a lot of people had benefited out of changing their optional in 2014-15 period. So there were very few people who were telling me in a positive way that you should take this optional. But at the same time, I looked at syllabus and I found that it had very much applications. On one side, if I managed to get into the services, it is very useful. And as plan B, I was thinking that if I have to do something like management, MBA from some colleges, in that case the thinkers that are there, they are universally applicable. So that was the other part. And then I was very skeptical of abstract philosophical subjects. So when you look at PSIR, sociology, I was like, there is no limit to argumentativeness there, and I would want something more tangible which I can like see that in actual reality this is how things are done, and like learn from that process instead of getting lost in the theory itself. So public administration was ideal from that point of view. And finally, when I was sort of taking PubAd as a serious subject for optional, I recognized that it had a wider relevance in other subjects as well. And at that year and the year before, there were some people who had managed to score good marks in public administration.
Yes, we had toppers from public administration. I mean, quite a few number of times, and it's one of the most popular subjects in which at least the percentage of finally qualified candidates is a lot. Many people do qualify this exam through PubAd. Of course, toppers being a game of, top 10 ranks is anybody's game. So with respect to public administration, as I know, and I would like our friends who will watch this video to know, you've had a journey, right? I mean, quite a journey. So what sort of a journey you had with public administration in terms of the learning curve that you went through, as well as the marks, that the way they reflected in the examination? So tell us more about it.
So when I look at my marks, so in my first mains in 2019, I scored 262 marks in PubAd, which was above average during that period. PubAd was not the rank limiter. I was not good in GS, and I was like, I have to improve my GS. And in second mains that I wrote, I focused on PubAd not as much because I was like, GS is where I'm lacking. So I ignored PubAd and I got 235 marks. And in this attempt, I focused on PubAd again and I managed to get 283. So there's a wavering sort of a score. And what I believe was the major factor in this was action-oriented learning. It was not like in the middle attempt I didn't study PubAd. I went into very much detail in the subject topics which are very much scoring. Like there are two topics which are interlapping in paper 1 and paper 2. One is the financial administration management, another is the personal administration. So I was like, these two subjects in itself are like another paper. Like they are substantially weighted. So I focused on them and I studied them in technicalities. but this didn't translate into marks because I was not focused on tangible results. So that was the mistake I made, like getting lost in the details of the subject. And similar thing happened with public policy as well in that attempt. Like I was trying to read public policy in detail because in the earlier attempt I had 265 to 63 marks, and I was like, I'm doing fine. So now I should go to the next level and increase my knowledge, which was a blunderous mistake I made. Instead, I should have come back to basics. I have written test series again and tried to innovate incrementally on the answers that I was writing. Instead, I decided that I'll start from zero in some topics and build up very good knowledge.
So basically, you are saying that at that point in time, during your second attempt, you were not able to calibrate the emphasis that you need to pay on individual topics. Yes. So it is not necessary to do a PhD sort of a learning on every topic. Yeah. It should be attuned to the examination strategy. Exactly. And the learning emphasis should be calibrated, neither under nor over, neither lopsided. Yes. Right. So a calibrated strategy finally, which I hope you cracked the code in the recent attempt and you scored marvelously with 283. Right. So how did that realization and that transformation came about?
So this time, to give the context, like I was waiting for the result of my 2021 exam till I think it was April ending, May ending, and there was on June 2 or 3 the next prelims was there. So I had hardly 7 days between realizing that I didn't clear and next prelims. I had no preparation of mains at that point. So I cleared prelims and then I didn't have much time. So the first thing I decided was that last time when I did that excessive focus on subjects was one impractical and it didn't give the results that I wanted. So it was undesirable anyway. So I focused on my notes. I already had notes accumulated over my first attempt. Like if you're taking risk in 5 questions and 4 out of them are correct, which means that you have to increase your risk tolerance. Ensure that you take risk in a manner that 50% or about 50% is your success rate in risky questions. So that's where there is a net positive return on investment of time.
So basically a well thought out, a well planned way to take a risk.
Yes, segmenting it into 2 parts, the confidence and less confidence things. It makes it simpler.
Friends, that ways you can actually calibrate because as per my experience in every prelims there are at least 40 to 45 questions which as they say are low hanging fruits, which you can easily answer. It's about the rest of them, right? So the way Piyush is suggesting to actually calculate your risk appetite and then gradually expand the envelope related to it might be a strategy that can work for a lot many out there. Coming back to public administration, does the study of public administration made you more systematized as an individual?
Yes. Taylor, of course, brings the light on the fact that the productivity has to be through a system. So, and then you evolve over as you read thinkers that okay, after that Fayol comes and he says that it's not entirely like that, and then Mayo makes it entirely humanized. And further, like you look at today's modern thinkers and you realize that there's an evolution of thought on how to be productive. And the same happened with me as well in the process of how to make my plan productive. Initially I was very rigid, just like Taylor's methodology, that this is how I'll measure my productivity, these many tests, these many hours of input. But over time I realized that it is as important to internalize that and feel engaged in what I'm doing as Hawthorne studies try to show. So that sort of application I tried to do, and that was a good part about public administration, that it is focused on real life applications. And when you're able to apply them to yourself, it's a better life. And even after that, when you're joining service, it continues to be helpful. So public administration has been great.
Has been some sort of a contribution to the overall planning and effort and the channelization of that effort. Well, great. So what does Piyush, the civil servant, want to do now? I mean, once you are in the service, what will be your goals as an individual in terms of in your professional life? What do you see coming?
The way I see it is that India is a democratic country, so it is the elected political executive who will try to give me the broader goals, but within them I'll try to be most efficient version of myself, that I'm able to do things well, and at the same time implement the constitution with as much of objectivity as I can ensure, because while at some level things in real life are bound to be subjective, but like giving up to the fact that we'll see tomorrow doesn't help. So certain principles and ideals have to be upheld throughout life. So I'll try to bring in that, and I am particularly interested in the development side of things. So productive, constructive changes that I can bring in whichever opportunities I get, especially in terms of awareness, education, sensitivity training sort of things.
Great.
So,
Well, so that was our little chat with Piyush Gathala, ranked number 574, with a score of 283 in public administration, already an Indian Postal Service officer, now moving towards greener pastures. I would like to thank Piyush for sparing time out of his training and busy schedule to come here and talk to us, right? So I hope that this session would help a lot of you to further fine tune your preparation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Piyush.
thank you so much.